All right, so everyone can hear me in the back? Sounding good? Am I loud enough? Should I play the drum louder?
Play the drum.
All right, we'll get there. So, but I'm really here to talk about something slightly more serious than that. The name of the talk is How to Charge More by Reinventing Voice Services. And so a little bit about me. I'm Ben Klang. Sometimes I look like that. I usually have a hat, and I commonly have a drum. I have a company based out of Atlanta, here in Atlanta, called Mojo Lingo. We build voice applications, and that's a little bit about what this is going to be, what voice applications are, and how they can change your life and your business. And I'm also the leader of an open source project called Asterisk. It's a Ruby language framework. It's probably the oldest and most, well, not necessarily the oldest, most actively maintained framework for building applications with Asterisk. You can check that out. It's at asterisk.com. It's a really great framework, but that is actually not what I'm here to talk about today. So, how to charge more by reinventing voice services. Or the subtitle might be, making a buck charging by the minute is hard, and it's getting harder. So let's talk about the problems. Why is it hard? Well, the first is price minimization. I think everyone's very aware of the pressure to drop the price per minute of delivering voice traffic. That's nothing new. Service homogenization. Basically, everybody is selling the same product. It's hard to make any differentiators between you and your competitors. And what I like to call sexiness boringization, which is basically another way of saying commoditizing things, right? Everybody's offering the same things, and it's hard to be exciting anymore because everybody takes it for granted. So let's talk about these factors individually. The first is price minimization. So 20 years ago, in the mid-90s, Sprint had a pretty successful advertising campaign. They got Murphy Brown on TV to talk about 10 cents per minute. 10 cents per minute. And hey, that's only at night, by the way. During the day, they were charging more than that. So let's go forward just 10 years, right? 10 years we go forward, and I had to go to archive.org to find this. But this is a site from about 2005, a company called BinHost. I don't know if they're still around or not. If they are, I apologize. But they were offering, just 10 years later, 2.5 cents per minute. Almost a 75% drop in revenue for a single service in 10 years. That's massive, right? Let's go forward 10 more years. Well, now the price is basically zero. Okay, it's not actually zero. It's really close to zero, right? But companies like Skype, unlimited voice traffic, $3 a month. You can't get much closer to zero than that. There are other factors here. I mean, also Google, everybody's favorite Google Voice. Basically, Google Voice is free. I mean, it's free, right? They take all your phone calls and figure out new ways to serve you ads faster and better. But basically, it's free. And then service homogenization. So all of these services starting to kind of look the same. You guys are probably familiar with this site, voipinfo.org, a site well known to people who work in voice over IP, mostly because it has a ton of information. And one of the things it has on its site is a list of, and this is, by the way, this page is specific to voice over IP providers that are B2B only in North America. It is 12,000 vertical pixels. If you are a B2B VoIP provider in North America, you are somewhere in this list probably, but I have no idea how your customers are going to find you. That's rough. And then, of course, a lot of those companies are just gone. We randomly checked 78 of them, and 21 of those, the websites were dead. They were either didn't come up at all or they were redirected to some generic page. They couldn't make it. And I was wondering how many more of the sites I found were basically ghosts. Companies had stopped serving business, but the web hosting contract was paid up through the year. And the last factor is the sexiness boringization, right? The fact that what once was new and different is now just kind of the same old thing. Some examples of that are or a symptom of that, I think, is the acquisitions that we're starting to see. This one was Warwick Valley Telephone buys Altiva, and I think even more on point, JCOM made 6 acquisitions in the previous year and is buying 3 more early this year. And what that indicates to me is, they're not buying those companies for their amazing technology. They're not buying those companies for some innovative product. They're buying them largely because they want the customers. They want the market share. And then some companies, VoIPChat, they were a staple of the Asterisk community for a long time. In 2011, they actually closed their doors. I don't know how long they were running. It was almost 10 years, I think. So at this point, that kind of leaves us with 3 outcomes. You can buy or be bought, and to buy means a lot of cash. You can tread water and kind of hope that you stay afloat with the customers you have, but you can't really expect to expand too much. Or you can give up. But I'm really hoping none of you guys are wanting to give up, because that would be lame. Let's go for a fourth option. Let's innovate. Let's find a new way out of this. Innovate. So innovation is such a buzzword, and I hesitated to use this because I think it's easy to talk about innovation without actually getting into what innovation is, but I want to get into what it is. So let's talk about specific ways you can innovate to make your products better. The first is change your business model. The first option here would be, so everybody's selling minutes, well, let's sell seats. And actually this happened, right? I mean, we saw a lot of companies switch from selling minute-based plans to cloud PBXs that would charge you by the seat. And that was successful for them. But of course, now everybody is starting to sell seats. So now maybe it makes sense if there's enough margin on the phones that you sell phones instead of seats. I don't know, I'm not sure this would actually work, but it's one way to look at the market differently and find a different way to charge based on value. Another way you can innovate is to focus on being different. And this is not lip service, this is cultural. So one example is be the customer service leader. And not the people who put it on their website like, we're the customer service leaders, but actually, culturally, build it into your organization that the customer comes first. You find ways to astound and delight them with customer service. Rackspace has a pretty successful campaign around this, the fanatical support idea. But that's one way to set yourselves apart. If customer service is lacking in your industry, then be the customer service leader and you can charge more by the value you create there. Fastest deployment time period. And I bring this example. A friend of mine had a company in the 80s. And back in the 80s, if you wanted a computer, you would place your order, and sometime several weeks to several months later, it would arrive. And of course, businesses hated that because that's a huge lead time for a critical asset. So his whole business was based on the idea that you could place an order, and 1 week later, you'd have a computer. It was a pretty successful business. He ended up selling it to Canon. But he found a pain that no one else was fulfilling, and he solved it. But the last one's the one that's the most fun to me. It's specialization. So I think a lot of us in this room are technologists, right? So specialization, we can apply technology to be different somehow to our competitors. One way you can do this is by highly targeting your products and services. A customer of ours is a phone company, and they started by targeting the expat Cuban market in Miami. Now that's about as narrow of a niche as you can think of, right? But it was very successful. The people who bought their service initially told their friends, and after a while, they owned the Cuban expat market, and they had a solid base into which they could expand into the next niche. So finding highly targeted products and services gives you the advantage of word of mouth, but also you can identify what their pain points are, and you can build services directly targeted to them that your competitors who have generic products and services, generic voice minutes, can't match. And so they will buy from you. Another way to do this is vertical integration. If you can solve a series of problems for an industry, you can sell into that industry. So if you want to solve problems for dentists, figure out what kind of problems dentists have. Maybe their charting software is terrible. Maybe they don't have integration into reminders, and they send off reminders, but they don't have a tie back into patient scheduling. I don't know what the problems are, but the point is, find an industry, figure out what their pain points are, and then help them top to bottom with their technology stack. And you're creating tremendously more value. They're not going to get their phone service from Ma Bell if they can get it from you when it's integrated into everything else you're providing for them. So the bottom line is you want to deliver things that others can't. And when you're different in that way, you can charge more for that. So let's do a case study. Now, full disclosure, Power Home Remodeling Group is a customer of ours, but mostly that made it easy for me to get good information about them. So Power, they're in a very commoditized market. It's nothing at all like our market, right? Home remodeling. They do roofs and windows and siding and doors and that kind of thing. In their market, there were no players that had more than about a single digit worth of market share. So obviously, think back to the list of VoIP providers, right? There were thousands and thousands, but all of them were fairly small. There weren't any that were very large players. It was also an industry with a reputation for low quality, poor service, and unhappy customers. Okay, so actually it is kind of sounding like our industry just a little bit. So what did they do? Okay, well, they found that these were pain points, and they felt like they could do it better. So the first thing they did was they built a 100% custom end-to-end automation package. And what this did is it raised the quality significantly. No longer were windows being spec'd and then built to the wrong size and shipped to the house, and the guy comes out to install it and it doesn't fit. Right? They solved that problem. They were able to completely automate the sales, the financing, product installation, and the ongoing customer service. So at the end of the day, the customer gets what he ordered, gets it on time, and has a good experience when he needs help. Even years later, they still know what products were installed and how and what was ordered. They also use it to automate their call center. So this saved wasted effort for them because in a lot of cases, they would schedule appointments with consumers, but then the consumers just wouldn't be home. So they call ahead of time, they confirm the appointment, they call the day before, they call the day of. If they think that no one's going to be home, they won't go, they'll reschedule it. Save them a lot of money, they're able to do more with fewer reps. They also matched qualified reps. No longer do they get a lead, a random generic lead, and send the first available rep. And the guy gets there, and the customer wants a roof, and this guy only knows Windows. Right now they know ahead of time, we got a guy who wants Windows, we're going to send the guy who knows about Windows out to the site. And this seems like such low-hanging fruit, but click-to-call was huge for them. Just the ability to click a button and call rather than having to look up a phone number and type it or type the wrong phone. It gives them the ability to call much faster and more accurately, but we also capture the call. We record the call, we stick it with the call with the customer's record, and it made their agents' lives much easier. So what's the effect of this? What's the end result? Well, in 2011, they had revenues of 75-ish million. In 2012, they had revenues of 172 million. In 3 years, they had 130% growth. They are dominating a market that was run poorly, and they innovated and they made it better. And not only is this a story about how much money they made, because that's one thing, but their customers were actually happy. I was extremely impressed with the presentation from Power Home Modeling Group. They were prompt and punctual. When they said they'd be here, they were here. We had used Power before, we decided to use them again. That's a good recommendation. I was most satisfied with their professionalism and with the quality of Windows. I'm recommending the Windows. I get a 10% bump on anything you guys buy, so. Okay, but that's a case study for a different industry. Let's talk about what we can do. What can we do in our industry to innovate to make our products better? So we have the best toys, right? We have Asterisk, first of all. That's a pretty great toy. We have things like click-to-call I talked about earlier, right? This WebRTC thing that's coming, that's pretty sweet. We have text-to-speech and speech recognition tools. Okay, I know it's not really Siri, but I couldn't find a better icon that conveyed text-to-speech and speech recognition. We have voice over IP by itself is pretty awesome. And of course, we have Adhesion, which is clearly the best framework for building voice applications, right? It's open source, by the way. Okay, so we have these really great toys, but we're still selling this. And actually, not only are we selling this, we're kind of selling this with all these little things stuck in the top. I mean, fundamentally, we're still selling sort of a slightly better telephone. It's still mostly narrowband audio, and you still have to dial phone numbers, and it's just not really that much different. It's not enough different, I think. I think we can do a lot better. As an industry, I think we can do a lot better. So there's a guy named Jeff Hollingworth. He works for Ericsson on a sort of joint venture they have called AT&T Foundry. He spoke at the WebRTC Expo that was in Atlanta back in June. And he had this really great quote in his keynote, and I had to write it down. He said, communicating isn't going to be what you're doing. It's what you'll be doing while you're doing something else. And I think this sentiment was echoed in the keynote this morning, that communications are going to be more task-driven. They're going to be embedded in something that you're already setting out to accomplish. They're not necessarily, you're not going to pick up a phone and have that be your central activity. You're going to be surfing the web, you're going to be solving a problem, you're going to be doing something, but communication will be a key aspect of that. Okay, so what should we build? So I've got 3 example applications. These things are not real. In fact, they don't even work. Mostly this is me copying and pasting graphics together, but I think it conveys the point of some ideas we can use. This should whet your palate for what can we build in the future with these amazing toys that we have. So I've got 3 examples. The first is an incident response tool. So show of hands, how many of you in here have some experience with ops, like running servers, running systems? All right, yeah, me too. That was my first 10 years of my career was all running banks of servers. Let's imagine that you have a server down. Oh my gosh, Oracle has crashed. It's chaos. We've got to get on this. We've got to solve it right now. Let's get everybody into a central place where we can communicate. We can chat in real time, right? We've got text going on here to discuss. We can paste links, maybe to knowledge base articles or support information. We've got real-time voice and video, so we can converse and we can discuss and we can troubleshoot, brainstorm ideas, try to figure out what this could possibly be. And of course, we have contextual information too. So right here we can see the amount of memory in use on the server. It's kind of low. Maybe Oracle's just not running. Disk space isn't full, that's good. Bandwidth usage over the last hour, when did the problem start? We can see connectivity to various servers in the region. This would be a compelling tool. I wish I had this tool when I was troubleshooting servers that went down. But the key is that you're not just providing the voice, right? You're helping to provide this whole stack. And you might not be, you might have to partner with other companies to provide this other information, but you can be the expert in providing the real-time voice and video communications. Or maybe you can build the whole thing. So just to recap on that, we have timely contextual information. The view can adapt for mobile users, right? We can have a desktop view, we can have a mobile view. There's group-based communication, and those groups can inherit from existing organizational groups. So they can look at your Active Directory tree, and you can start a call with everybody in the ops team at once. You can allow ad hoc participants. Send somebody a link. They can click a link and drop right into the conversation with you and have all the same information you do. We can federate with existing external services. So for example, if we have a monitoring system, it can push alerts into that text room, right? And that monitoring service could be local, or it could be something that's in the cloud. And of course, because all this is going through a single channel, we can log it all. We can, after the panic has subsided, go back and look at the logs of the conversation. We can figure out what part of our response was good, what part of our response wasn't good, how can we improve. So we can do lessons learned and process improvement. And you can also link issues into the issue tracking systems. So you come back 6 months later, it's crashed again, you go find a similar ticket, or you find this response log, and you can see what the solution was last time. That's a tremendous amount of very business-specific information that typically is lost today, unless you have really good manual processes, and most companies don't because it's difficult. Okay, second example, medical records management. So medical records, I think right now, most people agree suck, and there's a lot of work going to improve that. But here's one possible way we can improve that. This is an example of a customer portal, or I should say a patient portal. I use myself as the guinea pig here, but I'm logged into my doctor's screen here, and I've gone to see Dr. Jonas Sims, who works in ophthalmology. And I had to call him because my eye was itching and I wasn't sure why. So I called him, and it recorded the call, and he took notes during the call. So I've got access to his notes here, this annotated transcript of our call. And I've also got a recording of the call. So I can go back and, what was it he said? What was the thing I need to do? Do I have 3 eye drops or 2 eye drops? I can't remember. But if I still have questions, this is what I've done in the past. If I still have questions, I can actually hit a button right here and talk to the on-call doctor. And I don't need to go look up the doctor's phone number. I don't even need to have a phone necessarily. With WebRTC, I could actually put the voice communication right into the app. And of course, it captures that and it adds it to the log. Or maybe I got his bill and it was like crazy. I don't even know what he charged me for. Well, I can hit this customer service button and I can get answers to what was charged and why, or possibly resolve the issue. And the last thing here is you see this secure login button, right? So I have already authenticated myself to this portal. When I call in again, or I don't have to call in again and enter PIN numbers or the last 4 of my social or anything crazy like that. So let's look at, let's recap of the medical app here. We're going to automate the medical claims. So we're going to reduce the load on the service providers. We'll use secure caller authentication. They'll have primary logins via the website that can have CAPTCHAs or 2-factor, and then we can hit a button in there, and we know that the person on the other end has authenticated with strong authentication. If we really want to get crazy, we can tie in voice biometrics so that when the call is answered, we can do a voice print match and say, yes, this really is Ben Klang. And if we want, we can cross-check against caller location. Maybe if there's a service provider that's more geographically appropriate because I'm traveling, you can make recommendations based on where the caller is coming from. And of course, we'll record everything, we'll transcribe it, so we have a document trail. Medical advice given to the patient is automatically added to the patient file. So the next time I go see the doctor, he has access to the same data, whether or not it's the same doctor maybe. And also important, auditing and quality, service quality, making sure that the advice given was the right advice, using it as a training tool for doctors who deal with these requests. Okay, so number 3, arts organizations, patron assistance. So let's imagine that you are working with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, a very fine orchestra from this fine town. And with arts organizations, they depend heavily on donations, right? On the giving of charitable types. And we need a way to make them feel special, because when they're going to give you $50,000, $100,000, they should feel special every time they call. Well, the problem is there are a lot of donors. And when I get those calls that come in, I might not really remember this guy calling, what was his wife's name, or I can't quite remember how much he gave me. Well, instead, I'll get a screen pop when he calls me, and I'll see exactly how much he donated. I can see how much he donated last year, I can see how much he donated this year. I can even see the next show he's attending, so I can make recommendations like, oh, would you like me to move your seat closer up to the front? I can see the name of his wife and children, so I can say, oh, how's Mary doing? Or how are your kids? So the point is that he feels very special. He feels loved and is hopefully more likely to continue donating or maybe even increase his donations. So let's recap this. We build a concierge service. It enables perfect memory for the person taking the call. And he can even help anticipate the caller's needs. Why is he calling? Is it the hour before the show? Maybe he needs to reschedule. The concierge can receive the information via instant message, and it can include a link that contains the caller ID, the last ticket purchase, seating preferences, the lifetime donation amount. And then we'll even give click-to-call options. So either the guy's on the website and he wants to buy tickets, he can click to call, and we can route him to an agent right away, and we can actually prioritize that call based on his value. Or we can enable the agent to call back to these people with click-to-call. And then, of course, if you have a show that might be subject to the weather, if this is an outdoor show, you can automate weather contingency notifications. So we've got all of his information. We can send a text message. We had to move it. It's pouring rain outside. We're at this new location instead. So when I think about it, it's not so much that we have the best toys as much as we have the best tools. And with these really awesome tools, we need to stop building these things, and we need to start building these things. Okay, so I rushed through that a bit. I think the drum got me excited. I want to mention one other thing. AdhesionConf, it's a conference for voice application developers. We're going to hold it in Atlanta. This is the 4th year in a row. We're happy to have Digium back as sponsors to the event. This is a conference a little different than at AstroCon in that we're focused on the apps. We're focused on what we're going to build, and would love to see you guys there. So adhesionconf.com if you'd like more information about that. And that's my presentation. So I'm Ben Klang. I would love to answer any questions you guys have.
No questions, Ben. So you're going to have to play the drum now, aren't you?
I may have to play the drum. Really, no questions? Oh, there's a question.
I don't have a question, but I'm curious, what's the question you were worried about getting?
I wasn't worried about getting any question, but some might accuse me of heresy right now, that we should stop selling minutes, that we should stop selling phones, that phones, the way they exist today, aren't the way phones will exist tomorrow. I think that's a debatable point. I think I'm right, but I think it's debatable. Yes?
I remember sitting in Bonn with Jeff Culver in 2006 or 7, and Jeff Culver was saying we got to stop selling minutes, and there's no more business selling minutes. And I mean, I know my company, and I know a lot of other companies that are still making a lot of money from minutes. The business hasn't disappeared.
Are you making the same amount from your minutes today that you were in 2006?
Oh, about 5 times as much.
But you have more volume, right?
Right.
Okay, and that volume came from somewhere. I think eventually you're going to continue to face that downward pressure on minutes, and you're going to have to find new ways to charge for it. I agree. Today, it's still a viable business model. The problem is it's not always going to be a viable business model. I think we need to be looking for what that next thing will be.
I agree, but the business is not disappearing. I think people are making more calls today, so the average cost per minute has definitely gone down. But I think the total expenditure is still pretty high.
So I would agree that, I would say that there are more calls on voice over IP networks. I think largely we cannibalized traditional telco networks. And I think to some degree you're right that the low cost has driven more usage. But I think that reaches an equilibrium, and it's hard to continue that. You're certainly not going to be making 5 times as much, I would suspect you're not going to be making 5 times as much 6 years from now unless you get a larger piece of that market share. And anyway, do you really want to keep charging for minutes? I mean, I feel like if you can charge for some value that you create where that margin is much higher, your margins right now, your minutes are probably very small. But if you can charge a higher margin, it's going to be a better business model. I would think.
Any more questions? One more question. Make it quick because we want to get onto the drama.
got 10 minutes. You got time.
Really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg Jennings, Sevier, Atlanta. So when I'm thinking about the WebRTC, there's still some things that they haven't completely fleshed out, like the user on the laptop and the microphone just doesn't really have some sufficient noise cancellation, or there's just going to be some other things that sort of crop up. And then so I guess, this is kind of a spin-off of, in one of the security classes, they had, there's a lot of security issues with releasing something like WebRTC that just increases the attack vectors that you can hit on these machines. So I'm just kind of curious. Have you seen a lot of these apps sort of roll? I know, what is it? My mind went blank. Salesforce is integrating a lot of these things, and they're doing some of the stuff that, does that exist now in Oracle with what you've presented here? Is that out and is it live? Is some of this stuff available? Is the use case working? Can you release these medical records and have this kind of functionality without the straitjacket and the red tape? And
right.
Can you be an entrepreneur and innovator in this space without? You see what I'm saying? It just opens up a lot of can of worms here.
There are a lot of pieces in that question. Let me try to get at a couple of them. The first about security and about poor quality microphones. I think any new technology has rough edges. Certainly WebRTC itself is not a finalized standard, and I think that the fact that microphones are now relatively common equipment is a step in that direction. I think we'll continue to see that. The two pieces will drive each other. There will be a demand for microphones and laptops, good ones because they're the availability of these good tools. So I think that problem somewhat will solve itself. We can't go into it blindly. We have to address security and privacy are still big issues. But I think the marketplace will help drive some of that. Your bigger question, though, about can you build these things today? So the examples I showed are not products. They are the products of my imagination. Thinking through, could you build them? The first example you could build, there's a company called Tropo that has a WebRTC plugin that has fallbacks for Flash and Java. I think there are others as well, but that's the one we're most familiar with. You could build it with that. The user experience might not be as great with WebRTC, but you could build it and it would work. You'd have to do some hard work to integrate the various pieces, and I think that's part of what the opportunity is not everyone's going to do that hard work and figure out the right user experience and figure out the right integrations. Technology-wise, I think you have enough to get a start, and I think by the time you are ready to go to market, some things like WebRTC will be stabilized to the point that it would work. But WebRTC is only one tool. There are a lot of things there that don't require web. It's better with web, but it's not necessarily requisite, depending on the application. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Sure. Thank you.
It's time, Ben.
All right. Okay, so James is a troublemaker. He told you about the quadricopter thing, and he wanted me to do something dangerous. And I was like, James, I don't have anything dangerous. I left the helicopter at home. I did it last year. Nobody wants to see it again. And he's like, no, you got to do something. I said, okay, well, I've got this drum in my car. And it's got lights on it. And I need some batteries, and I don't know how I'm going to turn it on. It has to have a voice tie-in, right? I can't just make my drum light up. That'd be kind of boring. So Will, who works with me, went out and grabbed these batteries from Home Depot across the street. And the vendor next to us, Algo, was very nice. Oh, I should advance the slides here, the danger area. Algo was very, very kind to allow us to borrow this doorbell device. So it's one of these things you put on the outside of your business, and you press the doorbell, and it calls a SIP extension, and then you can unlock the door. And, well, matter of fact, it has a little relay in it that I can use to trigger this device I've got. So Will comes back with the batteries and the wire, and here I am. I'm going to try to make a phone call and make my drum light up here. So let me make sure everything's wired. So if it all works, my cell phone should ring, and I'm going to hit a button. Okay, so this is going to go through Asterisk. So dangerous part of the demo. This little dial-in adapter here is connected back to my laptop, which is doing internet connection sharing over the conference Wi-Fi. It's going to place a call back to my office PBX, which is downtown. That's going to call my cell phone. And then assuming we can still talk end-to-end, when I press a digit, the lights should appear. So I would say drum roll, please, but I've got the drum. All right. All right. See, this is the dangerous part. Do I have cell servers? Okay, hold on, troubleshooting. Am I on the Wi-Fi?
You know, it
Yes.
wouldn't be dangerous if it if it's all rehearsed and just
It
worked.
totally worked in rehearsal. All right. Well, all right, so it said it processed one call. Let's try this again. Keep going. Oh, it's not registered. Okay, we're going to reboot. We'll power switch here. We're going to reboot. Solves everything, right? Course set verbose 3. Lights are good. Oh, okay. Oh, it registered. Okay, here we go. Need the phone. Oh, that sounds better already. Ha. Okay, I got the call. Hello? I can hear me too. All right, here we go. This is kind of cool. All right. So there it is, my dangerous demo. Thank you very much. Sorry?
So what do you think, Tim? Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think you've done it again, Ben.
I have.
Yeah. Even Tim
troublemaker.
admits it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's it. Unless anyone has any other questions, I'm Ben Klang, Mojo, Lingo, Adhesions, all good stuff. Check it out, and see you at next Astricon. Thank you.